Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Good morning to our listeners on this beautiful sunny morning in South Africa. To those of our listeners who are from overseas, we have got amazing weather this morning. And welcome to my show, Crime Uncovered. My name is Silke. On my show, we discuss all things crime related. And I'm so excited about the show this morning. I have the person who trained me on polygraph testing. I'm going to be interviewing him for a book that he wrote, Truth Extracted. I hope I've got that right, Cliff. You'll correct me. It's Monday morning. And we will be Truth Extraction, Reading Between the Lines. I did read that book. It was absolutely fascinating. And we are going to be talking today to Cliff about Oscar Pistorius. Just to recap about Oscar was a Paralympic who had a bright future ahead of him. He, on the 14th of February 2013, he shot dead his girlfriend as she was in the bathroom of his home. He later claimed that he thought it was an intruder. Judge Masipa found Oscar guilty of culpable homicide, but the Supreme Court of Appeals overturned this verdict, and Oscar is now serving a prison term of 13 years and 5 months for murder. Welcome to the show, Cliff, and thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. Morning, Cliff. All right, so Cliff, I know that you had an interview and an article in the You magazine about Oscar Pistorius, and that is why I approached you for this. You have been in the field of detection of deception for many years, and you've taught many students, including myself, on the art of conducting polygraphs. You've also written that book, as we said, Truth Extraction. Can you please explain to our listeners what the book is about?
The book is about different methods and technologies used to detect deception. For example, statement analysis, facial analysis, microfacial analysis, voice stress analysis, and biofeedback polygraph analysis, and how they can all fit together to help forensic investigators.
That facial analysis, I know what you told me about the one guy that I was dating, and I argued with you, and you were so right that this is actually the subject of my next book. My next book is about sociopathy. And Cliff, knowing you as I do, I know that you would have studied Oscar Pistorius' face. Can I ask you, in your opinion, what you have concluded from his features? Before you answer, Cliff, I just want to make one thing very clear to our listeners. Today, this is only about an opinion. So I'm asking your opinion, please, Cliff, about Oscar Pistorius' face.
Correct. Okay, Silke, I just want to state as well, it's my personal opinion. It's not an allegation and it's not factual. It's my personal opinion. During some of his court appearances, to me, he made no attempt to preserve his dignity. He allowed nasal mucus to drip unchecked into a bucket. He did that also on the BBC interview. One would expect in a normal situation that a person would preserve their dignity. They would wipe their nose or hide their face. But it seemed to me that this was his, it was a show. He was putting on a show to extract sympathy from the audience.
Yes, and
I view those behaviors as attempts to manipulate.
And Cliff, having polygraphed for well over a decade, I would tend to agree with you. Cliff, would you think, in your opinion, that he shows narcissistic or sociopathic traits, in your opinion?
In my opinion, he shows both. Let's just talk about narcissistic personality disorder, NPD.
Yes.
Firstly, the consensus of opinion is that it cannot be cured. It's usually a lifelong condition. It occurs more commonly in males. The exact causes are unknown, but are likely the result of genetic and environmental factors. The symptoms include an excessive need for admiration, a disregard for other people's feelings, inability to handle criticism, and a sense of entitlement. NPDs come across as being above others. They are highly sociable and create very good first impressions, but they always tend to steer conversations back to themselves. They have the latest, the greatest, the fastest, and hottest, smarter, etc. They are arrogant, manipulative, patronizing, and demeaning. They're controlling, very controlling, especially in relationships. They believe that they are special or unique, and they will exploit others without guilt or shame. Talk about sociopaths, ASPD, antisocial personality disorders.
Yes.
These conditions generally can't be diagnosed until the person, the victim, the sufferer, reaches adulthood or late adolescence. ASPDs tend to break laws, they're impulsive, they lack regard for their own safety and the safety of others. Remember the shooting through the car, the shooting in the restaurant?
Yes.
At the end of the spectrum, they can be thieves and murderers.
Yes.
Not all ASPD sufferers have psychopathy, but all psychopaths are ASPD. They have a lack of empathy and inability to feel remorse for their actions. Their relationships are often unstable and chaotic. Rather than forge connections with the people in their lives, their partners, family, they might try to exploit them for their own benefit through deceit, coercion, manipulation, very strong in manipulation. They are often callous and aggressive, revengeful. They are irresponsible and make impulsive, spur-of-the-moment decisions, poor decisions. And they have little or no thought of the possible consequences. They partake in risky behaviors. Sociopaths have a sixth sense for identifying the right people, the right victims to manipulate, and they often get into repeated physical fights. Now, I've given you those two descriptions. Can you fit Oscar in anywhere there? It's a bit of a crossover.
Yes, I can.
So the essential differences between those two conditions, the NPD is kind of hapless and unaware of his personality issues, and they don't really care about the effect that they have on others. They're unaware of it. They are likely to be aware that they are different from people who experience empathy, and they will knowingly use that difference to get their own way. So they play the long game, but narcissists play the short game. And there is certainly overlap between the two disorders. And in my personal opinion, not an allegation, but fact, Oscar has symptoms or displayed behavior from both those two categories.
You know, since I've been writing my book about sociopathy, I've done a lot of research, and everything that you have said is exactly what I've learned. And then you've also told me a little bit more. Thank you so much for that very interesting and in-depth explanation. And Cliff, I know you've got a way of figuring out human beings. I know this because you told me some truths about myself, which I thought were well hidden. You know, you have this ability to peer into somebody's soul. So I'm quite glad you're living in Tulbach at the moment, Cliff. Cliff, do you think that Oscar knew that Reva was behind that door on that night?
I do indeed. I think that they had an argument. A violent argument. I think he lost control over her and therefore lost control of his temper. I think that he shot her in a fit of extreme rage. Being highly intelligent, he was able to come out with an alibi. I had no doubt in my mind that he knew she was there.
And you know, I tend to agree with you because when I did my research on narcissism, that loss of power and control and the fact that she had locked the door, that was very, very telling for me personally.
Yeah.
We are now going to go to an advert break, and please, listeners, stay tuned for this very fascinating conversation. I have a few more questions for Cliff after the break.
Sure.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za. An industry first in the world of internet radio. Not only are we an internet radio station, we are an internet radio platform for your brand. So why not expose your brand to potentially thousands of listeners and improve your customer relationships and brand equity with podcasts and live broadcasts? Be sure to check brandlive.co.za for more information. brandlive.co.za, harnessing the power of internet radio.
Brandlive.co.za is thought leadership radio. It's a new way to communicate your brand, your value, and what you think about your industry. Be a leader.
You'll never stop at one. I'll take you all on.
Be your voice.
I have a dream.
And we will help you shape your industry. Our radio platform is for thought leaders who want to share insights, businesses who want to create value for their databases, organizations who want to control their message, for those that drive change. Make your brand come alive on brandlife.co.za, harnessing the power of talk radio.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za.
And welcome back, everybody. We are going to continue this fascinating conversation with our most interesting guest today, Cliff Coetzee, who teaches polygraph testing and who also is an author of many, many books. We are discussing Oscar Pistorius this morning. Cliff, you're an expert in SCAN. Can you please explain to our listeners what this term means?
SCAN is an acronym for Statement Content Analysis. SCAN is a very old technique. It was developed in the 50s by German psychologists. And the way that it works is everybody has a unique way of using their words. Even though we all speak English, we have a unique way of using words. I can listen to a conversation. If you could take out the accent and you played somebody that I knew, if you played them just talking normally, I would actually tell you who that person is because I tune into the way that people use language. Now, what SCAN does is it teaches you to pick up when people change the way that they string their words together. Because when people are lying, they mostly tell the truth. What they do is they edit their stories. Whatever they're telling you, they generally take out the bits that are shaming or criminal. So the story can still flow to the untrained listener, but to the trained SCAN analyst, you pick up the jars, the stop streets, you pick up the sensitive parts of the statement, and you are then trained to explore, to make the person give you further information. Just a quick one. With an insurance claim, a person might say, I parked the car. Now, that's unusual because there's no personal pronoun. So a person might say, I parked the car. When I came back, the car was stolen. The norm would be to say, I parked my car. And when I came back, the car was stolen. Because you can't give up ownership of something before it's actually been stolen. So that's how it works, by abuse of pronouns and missing information. Somebody says, I went to my house, I changed. After I changed, I left the house. And later I heard that my house burned down. So then you must go and say, well, he said after, what happened before? So if people start sentences with the words before or after, you then should ask what happened before or alternatively after. So it teaches you to find missing information in a story, because the missing information is always the part that's been edited out, the criminal or shaming parts.
That's so interesting, Cliff. And as you know, I did do the course with you, and you did tell me that it would take me many years to become an expert. But just to add into that, I once did tests at a company where money had been stolen, and it was so many people to be tested that I said, let everybody please write a statement. And I thought I'll apply my very amateurish skills of SCAN analysis to those statements, and it was so clear because the lady who had stolen the money referred to it as cash, and after it was stolen she referred to it as money, and I knew I had her. And in fact, we got a confession from her, and she actually went on to become an engineer, and she invited me to her graduation because I had a long chat to her, and that employer actually kept her on. So that's just as an aside. Let's go back to Oscar Pistorius. So in his testimony, do you feel that there were certain words, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, I don't expect you to remember his entire testimony, but in his testimony, do you feel that there were certain words that Oscar used that would have shown a SCAN expert that he was not telling the truth?
Yes, in fact, there were many. I can't remember them all now because it's quite old.
Yes.
In fact, I did put some of that on YouTube. I put some analysis on YouTube. But there were several places. I sat and I watched the court case, like most of the country did. And there were many cases where he gave himself away, where he changed language and changed words, changed descriptions.
Yes.
But I can't remember them all now.
Yes, well, I did feel the same. Okay, that was just my opinion, though. Just want to make that very clear. Now, Cliff, in my book that I wrote, Gotcha, and when I started my criminology degree, which I have not finished through UNISA yet, but will hopefully finish one day, the one underlying fact which I always talk about for criminology that makes people vulnerable to becoming part of the criminal justice system is the lack of a strong father figure. It was very clear in the trial that Oscar did not have a strong father figure. I think his father pitched up for 1 or 2 days in the courtroom to support his son. Do you think that this would have exacerbated his narcissism?
I do. We see that in sectors of our society today. We have a lot of absent fathers.
Yes.
And particularly males, they become angry, hostile. And that's why we have, I firmly believe that's why there is so much violence in certain sectors of our society. And I blame it on absent fathers, definitely.
And I agree with you, Cliff. And this all started when we in South Africa had migrant labourers coming to work in our mines. The family units broke apart in the black culture. But if you look across the world, family units are broken up. We have a nation, an entire planet of broken men. And when I do my public speaking, I often say to women, we need to find a way to empower ourselves without disempowering men. Because, I think a lot is placed on men. We expect them to save us, but they can't save us. And money equals power as well. So women need to be financially, stable on their own without relying on a man. I want to ask you, how do you think Oscar is coping in jail?
I would think he's not coping well at all. I think he's the type of person that needs liberty. As you know, sociopathic people cannot tolerate prison very well.
Correct.
They probably suffer more than anybody else. They need freedom. They need liberty. I think he's probably having a very torrid time. I feel sorry for him.
I also think he's going to have a torrid time because in my research with narcissism, you spoke about that attention and they call it fuel. So I know that he would need that fuel. And I think that would be very difficult in jail, especially, what he's been sentenced for. And we don't know. Of course, we have an opinion that he shot Reva knowing it was her. But, maybe we are wrong. But the people in jail would probably believe the same thing, and they have sisters and mothers, and I don't think that they would give him the attention that he would need. Do you think the fact that he lost his legs at such a young age, and then his mother at such a young age, also had an effect on him?
It must have had a negative effect on him because straight away he's different. And then he has this overwhelming need to be better, to succeed. Absolutely, it would have affected him. But it's a dreadful set of circumstances.
And Cliff, in a way we could respect him because he used that terrible loss of his limbs to his own greatness, because he did become great.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've got both my legs. I could never achieve anything that Oscar achieved. I'm not driven to achieve that at all because I did not suffer that. So I think he was almost on the right path. But then, of course, as you mentioned, a lot of people sympathize with him, and saying, Reva, he didn't know it was Reva. He did think it was an intruder, but they forget the history of the guns. As you mentioned, that he shot through the skylight of the car, that the gun was handed underneath the table. Just absolute negligence with a gun. And basically, I want to say to him, who the hell did you think you were doing that? It's just nonsense to do that. Cliff?
He's obviously a very strong individual, very powerful, very driven. I mean, what he did, one can only admire him. But then again, the impulsive behavior took him to prison, ultimately.
Yes, it did. It did, because in the end, somebody lost their daughter. A beautiful young lady was killed. And Cliff, I have never done a course on guns. I have no interest in guns, even though I'm so engrossed in the field of crime and written a book on crime. No interest in guns whatsoever. I'm sure I'm correct when I say that you are taught that you must know what you are shooting at. You must see your target and know what your target is. Am I correct when I say that?
Absolutely.
Right.
And he had extensive firearm practice.
Exactly. And those bullets that he used, he was not playing, was he? Because those bullets really did maximum damage.
Yeah, I think Ranger ammunition, soft hollow point, very dangerous ammunition.
Yes. Listen, he did
to inflict maximum damage.
Cliff, I also think, never mind being a narcissist or a sociopath, the man that I dated was a sociopath and he has many guns. And I can tell you now, he was absolutely responsible with those guns. Cliff, so I just want to talk a little bit about what you do. A lot of people have asked me where I trained as a polygraphist, and I always say Cliff Coetzee. But I think for our listeners, please just mention the name of your company, where you train, what training you offer.
We run a business called SA Polygraph Academy. We are South African agents for Stalting polygraphs. So we train investigators to become polygraph examiners. We also train in voice stress analysis. We developed probably the world's best voice stress analysis system, AVSA Pro. And we're resident in the Western Cape, and it's going well.
And I can honestly
training virtually every week.
Wow, Cliff. And I can honestly say I use AVSA Pro and I love that system. It is a self-scoring system, which, Cliff, do you remember when I did my course with you years ago and I said, but why can't they just do a system that scores itself? I don't like the scoring. It's so difficult. And how petulant I was. And you said to me, they'll never do it. And now, Cliff, look at me today. I do that. I do those polygraphs and it's self-scoring. I don't even need to apply my mind really when it comes to scoring. Cliff, let's talk about your latest book. Please I know that I got the name wrong. I do apologize. Truth Extraction, Reading Between the Lines. Where is it available? And
Truth Extraction Continued. It's available only from me.
Only from you. So if somebody wanted to buy that book, they would either email you and we will put your email up on the podcast, or they can telephone you and you would mail them a copy?
Correct. It's cliff@sapolyac.com.
All right. We'll put that up. And what is the cost of the book, Cliff?
It's 250 Rand.
And then plus Postnet, which would be about 99 Rand, depending on the size of the book.
We just send it. We send it off by courier or post.
And that would be
250 Rand. And
that would be for the cost of the customer.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it's 250 and we send it. There's no extra cost for delivery.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Cliff. Cliff, 1,000 thank yous for being on the show. You know that I have so much respect for you. I'm sure you've heard via the grapevine that behind your back I call you Mr. Lie Detector. I know when I did my course and we got talking about personal things, there was very little I could hide from you. I think I blushed many times when I tried to hide, the things that we all hide behind our walls. So, Cliff, I'm sure we will be in touch again very, very soon. I cannot thank you enough for being on the show today and for just being an absolutely fascinating guest. And that, listeners, brings us to the... Thank you, Cliff, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye, Cliff.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye. And that brings us to the end of our show. Please tune in again on the first Monday of April. I will be back with another show. And once again, it will be a surprise what I'm talking about. And with that, I want to wish you all, God bless you and stay safe.
The Dramatic Talk with myself, Bongani Drama. Bringing you insightful conversations on the Convo Corner, your latest celebrity news on Dramatainment, and your latest fashion news on Stashing Fade.
This is Bongani.
And myself, Rose Rataka. Bringing you your latest news and sports updates.
Every Wednesdays, 2 to 3 p.m. Only on www.brandlive.co.za.